Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. I figured, let me see, what is it? 7? Yes. Okay. So I figured I'd get on and go ahead and follow one of the games that are ongoing for the tournament. So we have Magnus Carlsen versus Liren, and it is round 7, game 1. So as always, for my people in the Philippines, mabuhay, kamusta na, salamat king makaibigan. For coming by and taking a look at my video. As always, for anybody who is coming from Norway, I will say God Morgan and Tusen Tak. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by and taking a look. And anybody who is coming from China, I will say Ni Hao and Shishini. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by and taking a look at my video. If you guys are ready to go, I got a good one for you. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we got C4, knight comes to F6, knight to C3. We have E5, we got E3, and we have knight to C6. And this is called the English opening reverse Sicilian. If you kind of notice, if you kind of flip the board, this is kind of like E4, C5, and knight coming to F3, E6, knight coming to C3. So it's kind of like a, like I said, it's like a reverse Sicilian. So if you flipped it, you would kind of see like, oh, okay, this look kind of, it looked kind of Sicilian-like, just kind of like, like mirrored or whatever. So that's why they call it that. So we got queen coming to B3. We see bishop down to B4. Knight comes to D5. It is not pinned. So you have the ability to move it. You haven't moved your D pawn, so the knight is fully movable. And we do see bishop take bishop back to C5. Now, you definitely do not want to take here because you're going to be looking at pawn takes D5, and then oops, you just dropped your bishop. You're probably going to have to go ahead and sacrifice your bishop here and stuff like that, because if you move the knight, the bishop is gone. So that's definitely not where you want to be. So we do see bishop coming to C5, and we see D3, and then we have castles by black. Even in this position, it's not losing a piece, but it is kind of undesirable because knight taking D5, pawn taking D5. You are displacing your knight. So that's kind of like the main idea behind like putting the knight to D5 and hoping for like a, a trade, because, you're going to have to put your knight somewhere that you probably don't want to put it. So like I said, we saw D3 castles by black. We see knight coming to F3. We see D6, and then we see the novelty of the game, which is knight to C3. So I'm always telling you guys, like, pretty much when you see like multiple moves of the same piece, you're probably going to get into a novelty pretty soon. So we're at move 8, and you have seen this knight go from here to here and back to here again. The novelty is going to come pretty quickly. So we do see knight coming back to E7. We see bishop to E2. We got knight to G6. We see castles. Rook coming to E8. We see bishop to D2. We got H6. So, both sides just getting their development going. The rook trying to get on, like a potentially open file in the future. We got the look for the king on the black side. So, everything is everything. We see rook F to D1. Even though there's a bunch of pieces in the way, putting this rook opposite the queen is, it's not a bad idea. So the bishop comes back to B6. We see knight to E4. And we do see C6 by black. Now, in this particular position, it actually is desirable to trade this knight because after knight takes, pawn takes, it's good for black. You do have a damaged structure as white. And so, you kind of have a little bit of some issues. You are kind of stopping this pawn, but C6 can come. You can maybe play A6, bishop back, and then getting this bishop ready to kind of push, push the pawns. Also, you have like knight coming back to E7. So you can try to get, this pawn push successful, stuff like that. So, but like I said, we do see C6, and then we have bishop to C3. We see knight back to H7. We see bishop to B4. White's just trying to pick on like little weaknesses that, black has in their position. But we do see D5, trying to get ourselves rid of that weakness that we have. So we see pawn takes D5, pawn takes D5. And then we see knight to D6. So, the knight didn't really get displaced. It actually kind of drove into like a little bit better of a square. And now with the situation potentially becoming open, you do want to try to get rid of, the bishop for black. So, you have a nice little fork going on here. And of course, you're going to move the rook. Like, you're not going to give the rook away. So, the rook comes to E6. We see knight takes C8, rook takes C8, and then we see rook A to C1. Not necessarily because you want to trade, but just trying to put this rook on an open file. That's definitely where you want rooks to be, on open files. And then so we see knight coming to F6. We see G3. And G3, not only does it create lift for your king, but it is restricting the knight from trying to hop into, at least this square. at some point. Maybe you move the knight somewhere and then the queen and stuff like that is, you know, kind of creeping that knight up in there. So we see rook down to c7, we see bishop down to f1, and then we do see queen to c8, and something's got to give in this position. But this is actually nice for white because trading, rook takes c7, queen takes c7, and then we see bishop to c3. So we're trying to pin down like black's pieces to the defensive stuff. You know, we see we're kind of attacking this pawn a little bit. So the queen and the knight and the rook are, you know, they're all trying to do the defensive role. So we do see rook back to e8. We see rook down to c1. And we're not super worried at the moment for a discovery because, as you guys can see, this rook is completely undefended. So, you know, you can't really move the bishop anywhere with the tempo because you don't have a check available. So, you know, black goes ahead and just says, hey man, I don't want any of that at any point in the future. So they go ahead and move queen to d7. We see bishop to g2. We see queen to f5. And you see black doing their own little picking on white situation because you do have a weakened pawn on d3. So we do see rook to d1 to, you know, protect that pawn. We see e4. We got pawn takes e4, pawn takes e4, and then we have knight down to d2. You know, we've shifted to, you know, kind of looking at black's weakness because, I mean, they do have this pawn pinned, so they are having to kind of babysit this pawn. So as you can see, like the defense and attack has shifted quite a bit for each side. So we do see knight to g4, and this can be slightly annoying. I mean, this is a really nice position for white, but it can be slightly annoying because, you know, there's not really a great way other than rook to f1 to protect this pawn. And so as I'm always telling you guys, you know, these pawns on f2 and f7 are always weak pretty much until you get into an endgame, and even sometimes getting into an endgame. So now you definitely are pretty much forced to move rook to f1. And we have actually reached a position in the game, the point in the game, that if you do want to stop the video and guess and see what black plays in this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So there really honestly isn't a sacrifice in the position for black. So there's not like, you know, a knight takes here or like a knight takes here or like a bit, you know, there aren't any sacrifices. Like, so white is not in a bad position. Like, they're not, you know, subject to a sacrifice, but this is exactly what Liren does. You know, you're not obliged to take the sacrifice back. So what we actually see in the game is rook takes f2. And like I said, you are not forced to take this piece back. Of course, if you take back, you're going to be looking at bishop pinning here. And this is actually very miserable. But there are so many other moves that you can actually do in the position, you know, that doesn't just drop your piece and, you know, threaten all the checkmate situations coming up. So this is another point in the game that if you do want to stop the video and see what Magnus Carlsen plays in response to this move, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So what I just got done telling you guys, you do not have to accept, and actually it is like really, really horrible if you do accept this sacrifice. So like I said, there are so many moves that you can make in the position, you know, so you don't have to, you know, accept the gambit. Now, the strongest move in the position is actually like a move that threatens some attack and defends at the same time. So if you guys recognize that if you guys recognize that knight to c4 does exactly that, then you would be perfectly correct. This is the absolute top move in the position. It simultaneously protects this pawn and also attacks this bishop at the same time, and makes it really, really like tough for black because now they are possibly putting themselves in like a deadly pin because, you know, they do not have the ability to counter pin. After knight takes c4, Liren really only has the ability to play knight to h3 with check. And I think honestly, when he was calculating like going into the sacrifice, I really don't think that he calculated knight to c4 because it's just such a perfect move. So I think that if he was thinking about the sacrifice and he actually was thinking about knight to c4, I don't think he would have went into it, but I think that he just missed it. That's the only explanation I feel like I could give for that, because it's just such a perfectly defensive move. So knight takes c4, and then we do see knight to h3 with check. We see bishop takes h3, queen takes h3, and then we see knight takes b6. And it is actually in this position that Liren does resign the game. It's kind of one of those situations where, like, I mean, you're gonna be You're going to be losing your knight here, you know, after black takes back. But at the end of the day, you're going to be subject to this really, really crazy check. And the problem with this check is it's threatening mate. So it's pretty much mating. You know, at best, you're going to be losing your rook. So it's just really, it's a really miserable situation to be in as black. So in light of that, you know, he went ahead and resigned. Probably in this position, you're probably forced to go ahead and just do this because you have to defend against those mates. So you're going to be able to just save your knight. So you're just a complete piece down. So that's pretty much that situation. That is a win, you know, that Magnus Carlsen. I'm not sure exactly what the standings are. I've just been kind of like looking to see if what type of games I can grab. But like I said, for all of my people in the Philippines, salamat aking mga kaibigan. Tusen tak to anybody from Norway, and shishini for anybody coming from China. And I'll see y'all next time.